I'm Adrienne Enns, and I welcome you to the Intention Sessions podcast. I want to inspire our most intentional living. In each episode, we'll talk to remarkable individuals who will share their authentic journeys and their insights with us. They're going to remind us that life's complexities can be our greatest teachers, and that intentional living can be expressed in an infinite number of ways. I hope you find some inspiration for your most intentional life right here. I am very excited to introduce all of you to Sheetal Story. She was born with the ability to see aura and spirit. So that's the souls of our dearly departed. Ever since she was a child, she remembers seeing colors around people. She wasn't quite sure what it meant, but she did realize that she was different. She did her best to hide it, but at night, the nightmares were horrible. When she told her mom said that she had the ability to control her dreams to protect herself. So at the age of 9, she turned it all off. Fast forward to over the past 11 years, her abilities have returned in full force, and she's had no choice but to explore them fully. With each new turn, the right teachers and opportunities have appeared and opened her up further. Finally, she feels like she's living in alignment with her soul's purpose. She has a business degree. She has become a certified medium, meditation teacher, law of attraction coach. She has her master's in coaching. She is also a certified grief support counselor, certified therapeutic hypnotherapist, and a tarot reader. She is also a certified astrologer. Sheetal is channeling all of this passion to empower women to trust and strengthen their intuition so they can use this soul-led compass to live their best lives. Sheetal, I'm super excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. It sounds like a lot when you listen to it.
That's what everyone says. And you know what? I didn't want to trim any of it because, and we're going to dive into this, but I think your personal experience as well as your professional qualifications, just speak to so many different aspects of you. So I think it's all important to mention.
Well, I think, what clearly comes through in that description is that I'm a certificate junkie.
We're a perpetual student, which is not a bad thing.
Absolutely. I have a Sagittarian heart, which is all about learning and just exploring the wild blue yonder. But I think, I'm in such a kind of a metaphysical industry, to be honest. And so I think that certificates and, credentials show that I'm very serious about this work. And I really care about people and people's mental health. And I think a lot of times people come into the spiritual industry to find reprieve, for their mental health and their healing. And I think, what I take very seriously is that I want to be a healer that helps people. I mean, the number one thing we always say is to do no harm.
Yes.
And, it's hard when we're in this kind of industry that's not regulated. There, aren't any certificates really that are kind of backed by government support. And so, I think for me to show my clients, like, look, I've done the work. I can hold you and help you in a space that will actually make a difference in your life versus just giving you some woo-woo snake oils and, away you go and give me your money. Like, I really feel like I wanted to define myself against those stereotypes. So.
And those stereotypes exist for a reason. And I absolutely agree with what you're saying because as you're saying that, I can think of many friends. I personally haven't had the experience, but they've gone to very people who are very gifted spiritually or metaphysically. I'm not sure which is the right term to use, but then, sometimes things get open up, old wounds or trauma. And sometimes if people aren't properly trained, they're not able to hold the space properly and just help the process along.
Absolutely. I think especially with being a psychic medium, I think that's why I wanted to go and get my grief support counseling certification because I was encountering so many people that were having such deep grief and trauma around the passing, especially sudden passings of people in their lives. Although it's not just excluded to sudden passings, it can be someone that has been ailing for a long time. But even with like children, and I even had a recent mediumship session 2 weeks ago, or I think it was last week, where all this woman wanted to know was that her mom was sorry for taking her life. And it just didn't come out in the session. Her mom didn't want to talk about her suicide. And she was so distraught by the end of it. And I asked her, would her hearing that from her mom change anything for her? And she looked at me and she's like, no, I guess it wouldn't. And I said, because there's such anger inside of you. She's still going through the grief process, but she's so angry. She's stuck at the angry stage of it. And they said, what are some of the things that you can do to help discharge this anger and move you out of that into the next stage of it? And not to say that it's linear at all. Mm-hmm. Grief is not linear, but there's such anger. It came out in the session at the end, and she was surprised at herself because our culture is not, geared. I don't think there's any culture around the world really that embraces anger, right? You right. Push it away. You teach your children, don't be angry. I'm going to punish you, and so that you're not acting out in the grocery store or whatever. And now conscious parenting is coming back around to that. That's like, okay, let's sit with our anger and see what it is. And it's actually fear. And, her fear was, of course, that she wasn't lovable. Why would her mom take her life instead of coming to her? And so depression is why people take their life. And that's not anything to do with you. And so we came into this whole full circle conversation. And then at the end of it, she's like, because I said to her at the beginning, you're not going to get what you want, but you're going to get what you need. And I was like, that's a bold statement.
Are you ready to go in either way?
Accepted your money for this session, but I'm just going to tell you right now. And I don't tell it to everybody, so it's coming out for a reason. So she's like, you really meant that at the beginning, hey? I was like, absolutely, I did. I didn't even know that I was going to mean it. But it just, things come out, and that's kind of that spiritual connection. But then I can add that kind of that clinical, that trauma, that grief counseling perspective to help them move through it, so that it's not to say that a message from our loved one isn't transformative and healing and amazing, but there's also a piece there of holding people in their grief and allowing them to move through it without me taking it personally or them feeling guilty about it. We can just hold that space together. And it was so beautiful. Like, that's why I do what I do.
It's amazing. And yes, I just feel like that holding space part is so critical, so valuable, and it just can't be underestimated. Like, that is a gift in and of itself. And then when you have the proper training around it, incredible.
Yes. It just adds that layer that I think, and I'd love to see the spiritual industry kind of come through a revolution around that, if not just, having, because I had a client who went to a Reiki practitioner, and the Reiki practitioner didn't know anything about the grief that she was going through, but took that grief away, which again in itself is quite remarkable. But the grief was her connection to her person in spirit. And she was so devastated. She called me after. I can't believe this happened to me. That grief is my connection to my person. And now she took it away. And so you got to go back and talk to that practitioner. Like, that's not responsible, because that practitioner never asked you about what you wanted, what's your intention for the situation, and what is this grief about? Do you want it to go? Because she didn't. That's her connection to her loved one. And she went back, and the practitioner said, everything happened the way it was supposed to. You're meant to deal with this now. It's not my problem. And I went, give me this person's name. I'm going to go talk to them.
You can police the industry.
This is not normal. Like, I would just say, maybe so upset that like there's people out there doing this, not asking these questions. And I think that's the revolution I also want to see in this industry. So, I have to by my own example, be the change that I want to see in the world.
Yes, absolutely. And show people what it means to really do this responsibly. And by responsibly, I mean just, owning the whole experience.
Yes. And even that's holding the client in safety. I think that's the number one thing in trauma work, is that they're always feeling safe and that they have a choice and they have control. And then they can direct the session, not just the practitioner. But, when you take, like, I've got my Reiki level 2 certification too, and I've gone and taken a ton of courses on energy, and I'm just so interested in all these things. And very rarely do they talk about safety and trauma and creating that atmosphere and having proper intake questions. Very rarely. So yeah, there's definitely a revolution coming with this industry. And it is a buyer beware kind of industry. So to all the listeners that are listening now, if you've had a terrible experience, I'm so sorry. It just tears me up when you're in this vulnerable position that you don't have somebody that's really holding you. And ask the questions. What are your credentials? Look up their background. People will have their certifications and stuff on their website, or maybe not. Or maybe you can ask in the email to your practitioner, tell me about, do you know anything about trauma healing and support? Ask the questions is what I will say. Because oftentimes people come to me through referral, and I am so honored for that, because every referral means that someone has thought about me in someone else's moment of need and go, you need to go see this woman. So I would say 95% of my clients find me through referral. But in those referrals, again, people are just like, I need to book with you. And it's like, okay, do you want to know more about what I offer? No, I don't know what I need. I just know I need you. I was like, I'm so honored. Can I help you with what it is that you need? And so, I have some questions that I ask about that. But yeah, it's just buyer beware, and just be aware of what are you, ask some good questions is what I'll say.
I think that's amazing advice. And I just also want to totally jump tracks here for a sec, but yeah. I would love for you to spend a little bit of time with us, like at the beginning, because I have to think that other people have had similar childhood or different experiences at any point in life. And maybe come into their gifts like you have, or maybe not, So I'm just curious if you could tell us a little bit, like, what was this like as a child? Like, what was the experience for you?
Well, I have to say, it's funny because I always sort of say my gifts aren't born out of trauma. Like, nothing really bad has happened to me. I'm first generation Canadian. My mom and dad immigrated here my dad's from India and my mom's from Malaysia, and they met in Toronto, and that's where I was born. And so that was sort of the beginnings. And, as my dad's a chef, so he moved westward with his job at different hotels. He's a hotel chef. And when they settled on Edmonton, and in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And it's very, like, there is an East Indian community, but we lived in the west side of Edmonton. So very multicultural over here, to be honest. And I loved it. I went to school with people who were from Africa. They were indigenous. I had a New Zealand friend. My best friend is from Chile. She's half Chilean, half Lebanese. I had East Indian friends, but I didn't grow up in the East Indian community. And so I felt very much like I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to be normal like the other kids. And I wasn't. I didn't look normal. My mom sewed my clothes, cut my hair until I was in grade 6. I just had this very humble beginnings. My dad was very hardworking. My mom stayed home until my brother was 5. And then started working in daycares and working her way up to owning her own daycare. So I've come from very humble, hardworking, ethnic background, and being first generation Canadian, trying to fit in is all I wanted to do. So having these gifts that set me apart from everyone else was like, oh my God, I don't want that. I want to fit in. I want to be like everyone else. And so I think it was it was 9 years old. Everyone in our neighborhood would walk to the school together. So that was super great. And as we were walking past the swing set, the swing was swinging, and I could see this old man on the swing. And I said, oh, isn't that weird? That creepy guy in the swing. And my friends are like, Sheetal, it's just the wind. Like, look, it's just the wind. And I looked back, and it was swinging on its own. The other swings beside it were not swinging. That was the crazy part. It was only that one swing, and the man was gone. And I went, nobody else saw that? And they're like, no, it's the wind. And I was like, if that's the wind, then, and then I realized, why am I arguing for my differentness? Let's just be the same. I was like, oh, you're right. You're right. And I noticed in that moment that I was different. I thought everyone could see aura. Everyone could see this energy around people. And what I know now to be, I see the soul. I see your energy. And at that moment, and a part of this as well is I used to get really horrible nightmares at night.
Yeah.
My mom is a horror film junkie. So
I love it.
she's a fearless Scorpio, just loves that stuff. And she's like, oh, she sees it for all the theatrics that it is. But at 5 years old, she took me to see Poltergeist.
Oh my God.
And I know,
can't even
right?
watch it now. I'm just, I'm on the other end, like just a giant wimp. I'm telling myself it's a movie, but
well, she thought, oh, couldn't you see it's not real blood? It's ketchup. And look, it doesn't even look real and stuff. I didn't see that at 5. I was screaming. They ejected us from the theater because I was so terrified. And my mom didn't realize, honestly, that I wouldn't see it for what she saw it to be. So I think that colored all of my dreams. And I think we see that now too with Hollywood. Like Hollywood loves to make these sensational movies about possession and, you know, all the witchcraft and all these things that are great entertainment, but they're not real.
yeah.
Right. And so we get so scared, I think, because of these perceptions. What was happening is in my dreams at night, I would have this feeling of like somebody wanting to take my brother. So my brother's 5 years younger than me. And I've always kind of raised him as kind of his like older sister, mom kind of person. And I'd always kind of have this feeling like someone was trying to take him away. And at the end, this man in a white suit would come. And it was just scary. The whole thing was scary to me. So at 9, I said to my mom, I keep having these nightmares, the same nightmare every night. And mom said, you know, if you feel like your gifts, they're coming for your gifts, just turn off your gifts. Just turn it off. You can just be a kid and it'll come back later in life if you wanted to. And I was like, yes. Oh my God, be normal, be like everyone else. I'll do that. So I turned off my gifts and I had a really normal life. It's interesting though. I was talking to my best friend who's been my best friend since grade 5. And it's funny when you say best friend, right? It's such a childhood.
I know. but there's something so endearing about it, you know, like it is, but it's so beautiful too.
And before then, I wanted to be a clothing designer. I was drawing like outfits and I was so interested in sewing. And then after I turned off my gifts, I actually went very scientific. Even in school, all my science marks improved and I was very mathematical, very logical. And I wanted to become a doctor. Actually, I wanted to be a pediatrician because I love babies. And went through, grew up, great friends. I met the love of my life while I was in university, getting my business degree. And we got married, moved to Vancouver. And then I had my son who had a lot of health issues. So we moved back to Edmonton to be with our family. 3 years later, my daughter was born. And then that's when all of my gifts came together, came up again. And I was like, whoa, this is real now. And it was almost like a remembering. And it was I remember I was watching a lot of Long Island Medium at the time. And I'm like, okay, am I making this happen for myself? Is this real? I really just wanted someone to say, you're crazy, you need to go see a psychologist. And everyone I went to, they're like, no, this is real. Like you're meant to do this work. And I'm like, no, I'm meant to go back into purchasing and retire VP of purchasing for some big company somewhere. And every time I tried to go back into that, I had taken a sales job where I was working from home, amazing job. I had like great salary, great boss. It was one of those dream jobs. You hear people like, you work from home, you make your schedule and you make that much money. And I'm like, yeah. And it's not fulfilling my heart. And they're like, what? You crazy? And I'm like, I know, I feel like I am. I'm hearing dead people talk to me. And so one of my friends at the time said, there's a world-renowned astrologer that lives here in Edmonton. You've got to go and talk to her and see what's in your chart. She helps me out every time I'm in a bind. And I was like, world-renowned astrologer here in Edmonton? Like Edmonton's not to say that it's not a beautiful city and all that. I don't want any Edmontonians going, stop bad-mouthing us, but it's Edmonton. It's not like...
I've not been, so I am like reserving, we're just leaving it in your hands.
Yes, thank you for that. Leaving it up to me. But it's not a destination city, as I'll say it that way. So when I went to see her, and bless her heart, she passed away in December. She became my mentor of 9 years. I just love her so much. She looked at my chart and she's like, what did you say you do? And I said, I'm a sales rep in the food industry. She's like, no, that's not what you're meant to do. Tell me what you really do. And she looked at me through her glasses and I was like, I see dead people. And she's like, almost like a question. And she said, yeah. That makes absolute sense. And here's why. And here's this, and here's this, and here's this in your chart. And here's what you're going to do with it. I was like, oh my God.
So how did it feel in that moment, because as you
Validating.
said, like part of this is like, in the real material world, you've checked all these boxes,
Yeah.
and that on the other hand, what I hear you saying is, somebody is like basically staring into your soul and telling you, like, that's all well and good, but that's really not why you're here.
I think it felt validating. I remember
Mm.
crying in that moment because I realized, number one, this lady knew magic and I need to know what this magic is. So I made that moment, that decision right there in the moment that I need to know, I need to become an astrologer because this felt like science, although it's not a science, but it feels like science. And I wanted to know, and it felt so validating that she saw all of this in the trajectory of my chart. And even with like when I would be leaving my job, she's like, not for another 5 years. And I was like, oh my God, 5 years. It's so hard when you know your purpose and you can't live it just yet, right? But the universe was lining me up tight, like really teeing me up to leave well at the right and perfect time. And it was exactly when COVID hit that I got released from my job, and it was the perfect time that people needed me. And I haven't looked back since. So in that moment, it felt very validating to kind of go, okay, what I'm feeling in my heart, because I always felt, even as a kid, I wanted to help people. And in the jobs that I had, I made people very wealthy doing what I did, but it never made me wealthy. And it definitely didn't, upgrade humanity or help people in any way. I was helping people in a personal connection when I'd meet them. And I had great, even now in the industry, I still have great friends that I left behind. Well, not left behind, I still keep in contact with them, but it was always the connections. It was always the helping of the people, not the selling of the food that, lit my heart on fire.
I love it. So let's really, I have just like a zillion questions, but so I want to dive into like the heart of intuition, and just, or I'm not even sure I'm using the right words here. So I really want you to correct me, but I want to understand a little bit more deeply what you do and how you've cultivated this. And then looking several minutes down the road, I also just want us ultimately to get to talking about, people listening. So I know that they can do all kinds of amazing work with you, and we're absolutely going to direct them your way. But, for it's just that question of like, do I trust it? Don't I trust it? Like that daily dance with it. That's kind of where I want to head with you. Does that sound good?
Oh, I love that. Yes. Intuition is the gateway to everything. I always say that.
Yeah. So how did you cultivate your gifts? And I'm curious, like when you say I'm talking to dead people, like I'm just curious, like at some point, does that feel scary or overwhelming or daunting? Or is there just a different, clear energy to it?
Okay. So many questions. I'll
I
start
know
with
that
the
was a lot.
intuition. I'll start with the intuition first.
Mm-hmm.
So when this all started to come together for me, I was looking for support because I like, excuse me, I'm a Virgo. So I like things very orderly and organized, and I need step by step instructions. And the first thing I kept getting is you've got to go meditate, learn meditation. That quiets the egoic mind, that inner chattery voice that's always saying you're not good enough, or you don't do that, or people are going to think of you, or what will people say. All of that voice quietens down when you start to meditate and become the observer of your thoughts. You're not trying to stop your thoughts. That's not going to ever happen. But you can slow it down and drop between them. And I was like, that's interesting. So I took my first meditation class, and it was like instant love. Like it just went deep right away. And it was like, oh, I'm born for this. This is amazing. That's natural. So then from there, I found, again, I say this to all of my clients, and I'll say this to your listeners too, that when something is meant for you, it will just line up so perfectly. So I was looking for a guide, a teacher. I sent 100 letters and emails out to different mediums and psychics all around Canada in my area. And only one person got back to me. Bless her soul. She's still a friend of mine today. And it was kind of the opening to this world that I've never learned about because I'm East Indian. So my culture, I'm Hindu by religion. So I didn't grow up in the culture of like angels and spirit guides, and like all of this was very foreign to me. And so she kind of was the gateway to that. And then I was looking for kind of more mentorship. And I found a local medium who had a TV show, and it was so expensive. It was like $2,000 for 1 day or 2 days with her. And I remember talking, my mom's my best friend. And I'm like, Mom, there's this course. And she's like, no, too expensive, not for you. And I was like, oh, but Mom, it's the only one. And she's like, no, it's not meant for you. And I was like, ugh. My mom's a spiritual guide as well as spiritual healer.
Okay. I wondered, I wondered.
And
yes.
I just automatically flip into her accent. So, if there's anyone listening going, she just went into an accent. I do when I talk about my mom, I just go into her accent. So
I love it. I think we all do, and our kids will too. It's just like,
it's just who we are. And so, and then we went to this spirit fair, and there was this spiritualist church here in Edmonton that was opening up classes at, I think it was $20 or $25 a drop in. And I was like, oh my God. And they're taught by mediums who are certified. So spiritualism is the only religion in the world that actually is like sanctions mediumship and has kind of philosophies and all that around it. So it's kind of like this, there's a curriculum. And I was like, oh my God, I like curriculum. I like certifications. And so I went to this place for 3 years, drop in. I think it was every Monday we dropped in, and I became a real kind of fixture in there and helping out there and learning so much about my mediumship. So the basis for intuition, for mediumship, is intuition. All mediums are intuitive or psychic, but not all psychics are mediums. Does that make sense? So
not totally. Can you?
Okay, so
unravel it a little bit more for us?
Absolutely. We are all born with intuition. We are energetic beings having this human existence. And if you think about, there's an energy that beats your heart, that's the synapse of your nerves, that is your brain waves. There is an energy that animates this body, that animates your body. And that is the energy of the soul. And science can prove that, right? We can see it on EKG monitors. We can see that in brainwave monitors. We can see that even in photography called Kirlian photography. We can see the energy that does animate your body. And when you take your last breath, that energy is no longer there animating your body. We call that death. But energy cannot be created or destroyed. So that energy now transcends into the next level, which is energy. It's the energetic level, energetic layer in this dimension. So we live in an energetic world, right? We know about gas, we know about liquids, we know about solids, and we know about molecules that vibrate. And if they vibrate close together, then they are solid. And if they vibrate far apart, that they're gaseous. And even when you look at a molecule, there's just electrons that are whirring around. It's just energy. So we are literally made up of energy. Make sense?
Yes.
So that energy, then we are sort of this radio antenna frequency, like we're always picking up frequency in our world. Now we can only see and hear and feel, we can feel more, but we can only see and hear a short part of the spectrum, right? We can see that as the color wavelength. So only the colors we are able to see. We can't see anything past that, right? We're not able to perceive that with these 5 physical senses. But we are an energetic being, and we're always picking up these frequencies that are in our world. So, for example, when the pandemic first hit, there was so much fear of the unknown. And so we could feel that, I like to call it the white toilet paper flags of fear that you could go out to see in the grocery store.
Only at Costco? Yes.
Any grocery store, they're white toilet paper flags of fear. And if you're listening and you were one of those people, that's okay. It's okay.
Everybody was fear or scared on some level, and we all deal with it differently. Yeah.
Yes. It's a new thing that our generation and even 2 generations before us haven't gone through before. So, or maybe, the last one they could have. But there's definitely this feeling of this is new for us. And in this new, world of technology and working and, it was COVID really brought all of those fears to the surface, whatever your fear was. Not having enough food, not, life, a loved one who's vulnerable, all of those things came up to the surface. So that time, there was so much fear in the air. Did you ever, I don't know if this happened to you, but I heard a lot of my clients say this. They couldn't even go to the grocery store because it just felt yucky.
Yes.
Because you can feel the fear of everyone around you. We live in this collective soup of energy. So as a child, you have this intuition that's natural. You cry when you're sad and you laugh when you're happy. You can feel when someone has good energy. Babies can feel that. And when they don't like it. And so they just go with their emotions. They have no ego. Babies are not born with ego. But ego comes up, we know this in psychology, as a way to keep us safe, right? So we start to learn what is good and what is bad, what makes my mom and dad happy and what makes them sad, what makes them angry at me. I want to do more of the things that makes them love me more. And so we start to create these patterns of what is good and what is bad. And that's the ego always kind of trying to keep us safe, right? It's a safety mechanism. So our intuition and our ego, when they come together, it's conscious action, right? We use our intuition and we take action from that place. We are now in harmony with our soul and our ego. And so the two are actually meant to work together in tandem. If you didn't have an ego, you'd be running down the street naked, giving away your money, and happy as the day is long. And you could probably die from exposure and not eating. So we need our ego to keep us safe, to keep us alive. And so what happens is, as we grow up, we stop listening to our intuition and we start listening more to the voice of the ego. And so it represses our intuition, but it's always there. It's the voice of our soul, right? It's nudging us. And our soul speaks to us in emotion. So when you're unhappy and you're miserable, or you feel disappointment, or you're angry, you are out of alignment with your soul, which is pure love. Your soul is high vibrational energy. It's pure love. It animates your body. So when you're in alignment with your soul, you feel excitement, you feel joy, things light you up. And even if it feels a little scary, it's expansive. That's how you know your intuition is talking to you. So for example, if the first time I did a podcast interview, I was nervous, I was excited, but it felt expansive. It felt excited, right? On a chemical level, our body does not know the difference between scared and excited.
Yes.
It's the same chemical response. And so if we now can flip it, athletes do it all the time. The Olympics just came and went, and the Paralympics are about to start. And so we're watching those athletes. They were trained somewhere along the way that those nerves, when they jump off the diving board, you can make that excitement and you can harness it to do something good for yourself. And so that's how we kind of tame the ego. And then intuition then is when we listen to our intuition and it feels good, it feels right. And we do it from that place of our intuition and we take inspired action. Now our life gets to move in amazing ways and flows with the energy of the universe. So that's intuition. Everyone has that available to them. And we feel it sometimes. There's different ways that we all feel it. Nobody feels their intuition the same. Nobody. So I might get visions, I might get feelings, you might just get a knowing in your heart that this is meant for you. Maybe you hear, something that feels good to you, like take this exit or do this thing or buy this lottery ticket. It feels good. The voice should always feel good. Never, if it's telling you to do bad things, that's not the voice of your soul and you need a psychologist. But, to be fair, it's that everyone has it in their own self, and it when you feel it, because it feels good. It feels like there's something exciting here. And again, if you have a trauma as a child where you were trained out of your intuition, or every time you followed your intuition, you were punished, then you might not feel good about that. So then that also then comes into trauma work and how can we trust ourselves again? So it gets complicated when we start talking about the psychology, but coming just into intuition, we all have that. It is your natural birthright to have this intuitive sense. And if you can listen to it, and I like to say, build your book of evidence. So create a journal where you're like, this is what happened when I followed my intuition. This is what happened when I didn't follow my intuition. This is what I noticed today, or I noticed these numbers, or I had this weird bird fly across my path. And when I Googled the meaning of this bird, oh my God, it made so much sense. And you start to build these little evidential pieces for yourself that show you that this is not craziness. This is real. And there is an energy underneath this current that is guiding all of us. And if we can just follow the current, our life is so much easier than trying to fight the current every time. Does that make sense?
It totally does. And actually, you were answering some of my questions as you were just saying that, because, I think, well, for myself, maybe people listening, I often trust my intuition, and yet sometimes it feels very illogical.
Yes.
So, I'm wondering, yes, like, is that just like a crazy thought that I'm having? Or is that something deeper that I should pay attention to? So I do find myself wavering. But I do agree, like when I do get quite still and go into that sense of knowing, I can feel that I know it, but sometimes it's really not what my rational brain would have planned out for me.
Of course not, because your rational brain works on the past. It works on what's known and what's safe. And your intuition is trying to expand you into parts unknown. And that can feel uncomfortable. It's actually counterintuitive. So
Yes.
even if you think about when you first started your business and you started, what was the first thing you did in your business, Adrienne?
I started as a life coach.
A life coach.
Mhm.
So for you to hang your shingle as a life coach, how did that feel?
Well, yeah, I left similar to you, the corporate world. I'd been there for 15 years. It felt exciting and terrifying.
Terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Because your ego is going, and it's funny because an entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur, you are going against your brain every day.
Oh,
You're
yes.
right.
Yes.
It's
And
not
your
safe.
family and most of your friends.
Yes,
They're
it's
like,
not
really?
safe.
What are you doing? And I'm like,
It's not
I'm just
known.
going to give it a try.
Yes, it's not safe. It's not known. It's not anything you've ever done before. Entrepreneurship is doing something new and treading into new territory and expanding in places you've never been before. And mediumship is very much like that as well. You don't know what's coming. You don't
Yeah.
know. And so it's like to be this entrepreneur, you're going against everything that your brain is screaming at you. And can you just tell that lovely, beautiful ego that you are safe and that you've done this before? Or that you've seen other people that do it before. And if they can do it, then you can too. And there's no such thing as competition because everyone who's meant for you is coming for you. And so having those kind of I just knew those things all along. I've never felt in competition with others. And that's not true. I felt in competition with my best friend in grade 5, where she picked another best friend. And I was like, that's not right. And I remember after that, when we kind of came back together, I went, wait, everyone's going to have a special place in our heart. And I don't have to have exclusivity. And I feel like that even in my business, that it's like, I don't have to have exclusivity. I can help people in their part of the journey and as much as they need of me. And when they're ready to move on to someone else, I can release them with love. And so I think even that entrepreneurship journey or all our life journeys, we have this, our ego is always speaking to us, right? And
Yes.
it's how do you indulge it that determines the way you feel. So can you placate it and say, I love you and we're safe and I hear you, but I'm going to do this thing over here and let's see what happens and turn it into excitement, right?
Exactly.
Versus that fear. But of course, there's places, and I think I almost can feel someone that's going to watch this right now is going to say, but what about those times when it's not safe? Then your intuition won't tell you to do it if it's not safe for you. So even if, let's say, it's jumping off this cliff right now and everything in your body is saying no, and there's still an excitement piece there. And if your intuition, you check in with your heart and it's like, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Even if people are calling you chicken and everyone's expecting you to do the thing, don't do it because you will have the integrity of listening to your heart. So there is a difference. One feels expansive and one feels contractive, and one feels like there's a knowing in part inside of you. And if you just listen to it and know you're going to be okay on the other side of it, it will turn out well.
Awesome. So I do want to ask you how the listeners can cultivate their intuition, but I want to put that off to the side just for a sec because I'm curious to know then with your gifts in your studies and your mentors, how did you, what's the bridge between your intuition and then mediumship?
So mediumship, that came in again quite naturally. So the way that mediumship feels like, it's that I'm very clairvoyant, so I can see things, and I could see it was almost like in my mind's eye, but I could also see externally when someone's loved one was standing next to them. So when my gift started to come back in, I had to go back to work after having my daughter, and we were having this big food show, I guess you could call it. It's kind of like a big trade show, but we'd invite in all of our biggest clients to come in, and they had a speaker. There was 500 people there. Our vendors would be out, and it's like a sales show trying to sell them on products that are in our portfolio. And then the next day was all sales meetings and budgets and blah, blah, blah. So the first day was all of my clients were there. Two of my clients were there. My first time back after maternity leave. This is the first time they've done this. So I was very new, a little nervous about what to expect. And there was a speaker at the front of the room. So the room's packed. It's a ballroom at a hotel in Richmond.
I'm very familiar with these scenarios. Very familiar.
And so there's a speaker standing up at a podium at the front. The room is packed with business people, and he's telling a story about how he won the Grey Cup, which is football here in Canada. And he was a big, massive football player. His neck was the size of both my legs put together. This tall, massive, I don't know who he is. I'm a hockey girl. I didn't know what this guy was about anyways. And he stepped away from the podium for a moment. He got a little emotional, and I looked up, and he was telling a story about how he had, right the day before he won his first Grey Cup ring, his dad passed away of cancer. And his voice started to quiver, and he stepped back from the podium. And then almost immediately I could see this man appear behind him, almost like translucent. I could tell that he was not actually there, but I could see him. And he had a mustache. I could draw him. Like, he had a mustache, he had this, and he was tall and lanky. And he put his hand on this football player's shoulder. And instantly, it was wild because you could see the energy transfer. And he took a deep breath, and he composed himself, and he came back to the podium to speak. And it was almost like that's how our loved ones support us in our moments of grief, is that they kind of infuse us with some of their energy and give us their support. And that was the first time I got to see it, like actually see it. I was like,
oh, it brings tears to my eyes to hear it.
It's so beautiful. Like, they don't stop supporting us just because they took their last breath, as you wouldn't to your loved ones if you took your last breath today.
No way.
Right? You
would hang around as long as I could.
Absolutely. Because you have a vested interest with your babies, with your family. You wouldn't just run away. Like, and they're right here. They're just in the energetic dimension, which lives right here. We just can't see it with our five senses in the physical, right? We can only see the lights. Even dogs can hear spectrums that we can't. So there is energy wavelengths they're longer and shorter than what we can actually perceive. So coming back to this story, I looked to the people beside me. I'm like, did you see that? Did you see that? Because I thought, I must be crazy. This is the first time this is happening to me, right? And they're like, what, see what? Yeah, he got emotional. I was like, oh my God, this is a swing set moment back from my childhood. Yeah. And right away, I could feel this gentleman now was behind me, like in a blink behind me. And he said, I want you to tell my son how proud I am of him. It still gets me a little emotional. And I said, I can't do that in my mind's eye. I was like, what is this?
Did you shush the dead man?
Yeah, I did. And that's and I think that's really important. Thank you for saying that. We have control because we walk the world of physical and energy. So we can say, no, I'm not going to do that. Leave me alone. We have agency for ourselves. But in this moment, I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And he said, you have to tell him you're the only one here that can see me. And I'm like, I don't even know that I can see you. Like, I don't know what's going on. I said, okay, you bring him to me and I will say whatever it is you need me to say. I don't know where that came from, but I'm like, you bring him to me. I can't do that. I'm here with clients. This is the first time I'm here back to work. People are expecting things of me. I can't be doing this. And then we were pulled out to go and set up this trade show in the other forum. And then our customers came over, and the guy didn't stay for dinner. And I was like, oh, good. It's over. It's good. Tomorrow is sales meetings and that's it. It's over. And so I came down. I told my roommate at the time about what was happening. And she's like, oh, Sheetal, like, you have to tell him. I'm like, no, I don't have to tell him anything. If he's not here, he's gone. That's it. It's done. And so we pull up, we're flying out that night. So we pull up with our suitcases into the ballroom. And I look to the front of the room, and there is the speaker, the football player, standing at the podium once again. And I'm like, I thought we were having sales meetings. The agenda says sales meetings. He's not on the agenda. And our VP goes, well, we actually changed up this scenario a little bit because he was so good yesterday. We thought he could help you guys with hitting your targets and doing some motivational stuff with you. And I'm like, great, this is awesome. So I sat at the furthest table away from the podium. And I'm a keener. I'm always answering questions.
We've already gathered that. Yeah. But thanks for anybody in the back of the room who missed it.
And normally I'd be putting up my hand and answering questions and offering, input. And I didn't say anything. And I could feel his dad behind me. And he's like, you have to tell him. And he's telling me all these things. And I'm like, I can't. And feeling his energy. So what happens as a medium? We have our aura. So we've already established we are energy. animating this physical being. And then their energy kind of blends with ours. So it's almost like energy talking to energy. So it's like imagining kind of like a little ball of energy coming up against your energy. They don't occupy your body. Possession is such a Hollywood myth. There's no space in this body for another spirit to come in. You can't, there's no such thing as possession. So that's a big spoiler alert for anyone who's listening. Yeah, you can't. That's totally Hollywood. But they can come in to influence, and that's how they kind of speak with us. So as a medium, we blend with the spirit. We know that they're coming in because I can feel their energy is shifting. And then I can start to get images and awarenesses and knowings about things that are just like out of the blue. And it's really about trusting yourself, because some of the things you will say as a medium make zero sense to you, but make all the sense to the loved one that you're giving the message to. So you just have to talk about going against your ego, right? Trusting, like even I heard a medium go pirate ship and someone goes, oh my God, I can take that. And like, that's the kind of thing that you're just like, you can't make that stuff up. You literally can't. It's someone's memories that are so dear, and only one person will understand that. And it's not your memories. So in this moment, I could feel the dad behind me, and I could feel his hands on, I could feel his energy, and I wasn't used to that. It felt like anxiety. Mm-hmm. And I've never had anxiety in my life. Luckily, my best friend has had a ton of anxiety. So I could oh my God, this is what it feels like. And so I had to go to the bathroom. I was crying. It felt like my system was just going haywire. And my roommate came and said, are you okay? And I'm like, I don't think so. I can feel him. She said, tell him to step back and you said he's going to present the right opportunity for it to happen. So let it be. I was like, okay. And I was just trying to remember everything, because at that time I couldn't connect and keep the connection going. I could only download the information and give it. I couldn't kind of stay connected. I learned that as I went along. So the football player stayed for lunch, of course. And the whole time I'm like, oh my God, I can't eat anything. I don't know what's happening. When is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? Is it happening? And he sat at the furthest possible table with the VP, or the president of the company. And then he walked all the way around the ballroom. There's 9 tables in there in a formation of 3, 3, and 3. I was sitting at the very back table, and he walked all the way around. He came to stand next to me, Adrienne, and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, I want to thank you for all your input today. It really meant a lot to me. Now, keep in mind, I said nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, is he being mean to me right now? And my roommate kicked me under the table. And she said, no. And I was like, oh. I said, can I speak to you outside for a moment? I have something sort of privately I'd like to speak to you about. And he's like, oh, absolutely. And so, this guy's towering over me. And I said, I'm a medium, I think. I don't know anything about football. I'm not a groupie. So please don't think that what this is about. I don't know why I started it that way. All these words came out of my mouth. And afterwards, I was like, why did I say that? But I said, I'm not a groupie, but I just want to let you know I'm a medium. I do see dead people. And I saw your dad with you ever since yesterday. And I'm like looking down at my feet, trying to remember all the things that I'm saying, that I had to say. And I said, he's very proud of you. He sees the man that you've become. You've become this businessman. And he's just so proud of you. And you're an amazing dad. And there was a lot of other things too that I won't share. And I look up to see, I think I've said everything I need to say. And this man is crying.
Yeah.
Tears are flowing down his face. His shirt is wet. And he said, thank you. And I went, you're welcome. Can I give you a hug? And he's like, yeah. And I said, I hope you have a great day. And I walked inside and I'm like, oh my God, I need help with this because I don't know what to say. I don't know if I said it right. And I'm like, why is this happening? And my roommate said, maybe this is the only opportunity he'll ever get to hear from somebody who can connect to spirit. Like, this is important, Sheetal. You need to look into this. And I was like, man, like my life is falling apart. But it actually wasn't falling apart. It was changing directions at the right and perfect moment.
It's such a beautiful story. And I'm grateful that you've got a friend who kicks you under the table and that you said that. And, it just reminds me too, because a lot of times in my own life, I think, we're in a certain place. We think, yeah, I'm going to this sales meeting. I'm going to do my budget, this or that. We never know really why we're somewhere, and we could be there for a very different reason, or maybe we missed a car accident, or I don't know, it could just be so many different things.
Absolutely. You're always being divinely timed. And so, what's meant for you finds you. But it also goes with the crappy stuff that happens too, like heart attacks and cancer and car accidents. Those all have purpose too. And if we
Hmm.
can see what the purpose is, 100% of the time, people who have heart attacks that survive, their life changes drastically because it's a wake up call for something else to happen, that they were asleep at the wheel, if you will, or they didn't want
Yes.
to look at the harder choices of following their purpose and passion and just having this job that was okay and paid their bills was as good as it's going to get. And life's going, no, there's something better destined for you. And so that's why I love that compass of that inner soul, that inner knowing, that intuition is always guiding you for your highest and best. And so that's why my specialty is helping people live their purpose, find what their purpose is, embody it, because purpose is an emotional embodiment. And if you can embody that emotion in all of the zones of your life, you will have the most purposeful, amazing, joyfully aligned life. And it all comes from that compass of the soul. That's why intuition is literally the gateway to everything.
I love it. And so that is the perfect introduction and kind of, wrap up to this. But like, so for people listening right now, if they just, when this podcast comes to an end and they're like, wow, this really spoke to me. I'm just really feeling something and I'm very curious about tapping into my intuition, honing it further, trusting it. What are some places that they can start?
Well, I'll say the great place to start that's really available to everyone is meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's some great timer, Insight Timer, Headspace, a lot of free apps that are available out there that you can listen, download to, and start to use a single point awareness meditation where you're listening to a guided voice or a mantra or some music. Because sitting in the silence, that's advanced. So when people go, oh, meditation sucks, and it's like, you tried sitting in the silence, didn't you? And they're like, yeah, I
It's
couldn't do it. I was
hard.
like, no, no one, we can't go from 0 to 60. Like, you got to go step 1, step 2, step 3.
Mm-hmm.
And step 1 is just a guided meditation for 5 minutes. One that I challenge some of my participants to is to count your breath for 1 minute. Set your timer and count your breath for 1 minute in breaths only. And if you lose count and you start to wander, come back to 1 and start again. And do it for 7 days and see if you can elongate how many breaths you can get up to. And, that's just a single point awareness, super simple. And then you can graduate up to something else. The second way is, of course, I'm a little biased, but taking intuition class with me.
Yes.
I do an Intuition 101 class. And, again, one of the blessings of COVID for me was I used to teach that class in person here in Edmonton. And my participation numbers would kind of, maybe 3 to 6. I think I got up to 12 one point. And they're in person 4-week classes. And we did a lot of hands-on experiential stuff. So much fun. I really loved
Yes.
it. And then when COVID hit, the studio I offered the classes at shut down. And my coach at the time said, it's time to bring your stuff online, Sheetal. Like, she'd been telling me forever, do it online. I'm like, no, I can't do it online. And so I do Intuition 101 once a quarter online via Zoom. It is experiential still. We just don't have hands-on stuff, but everyone has things that they do. There's homework. We practice on each other. It's so cool when we start to see the transformation from week 1 to week 4. It is unbelievable. It's one of my, I think, most favorite classes to teach. And the reviews I get are just, it really is life-changing when you start to know that you can trust yourself and you're in a lovely container of people who are doing the same thing, learning to trust themselves too. And you see everyone sharing their experiences, and it really is, safety in that container is number 1 priority for me.
Yes.
So by the end of it, people become friends, and it's like people from all over the world come into that class now that I can do it online. So it's not just limited to Edmonton. I only take 12 participants for the evening class, and I have an afternoon class from 11 till 1 Mountain Standard Time and one at 6:30 to 8:30 in the evening. So anyone can join, and I only take 12 because we are so interactive, and I hear from everyone about their experiences. We meet our spirit guides. There's also an Intuition 201 where we go into animal guides, and using cards and all that kind of stuff too. So it is, the sky's the limit, and I'm not the only one teaching intuition. So you can definitely Google it and see it. But I highly recommend checking out my classes, of course, because I've really tailored it to helping really, mostly my clients are women, trust themselves again and listen to that inner knowing. And most of my clients are professional women with degrees or designations, psychologists, nurses. Oh my goodness, like it's unbelievable that these discerning, smart minds are now learning to trust themselves, and the combination of the both of them, unstoppable, right?
I couldn't agree more. And then I imagine people can also work with you one-on-one.
Yes, I do one-on-one coaching. I also run purpose, finding your soul's led purpose groups as well, to really hone in on that and then throw off the shackles of trauma and grief as well. This year, a lot of people have lost a lot of loved ones. And so even I'm running a 21-day challenge right now to discover your soul's led purpose. There's 32 people in there, and 5 of them have lost loved ones in the last year. So it's really lovely because the container just comes to support them, in their grief recovery and finding purpose and listening to their intuition. So yeah, I would say if anyone's listening or who's listening wants a safe community to come together and figure out this stuff in a place where you don't feel crazy, I would love to have you. And it doesn't just have to be with me. There are other intuition classes out there as well. Just always ask those questions about credentials and backgrounds and look for some testimonials as well.
I appreciate that you are being courteous to your fellow practitioners, but I think now that people have spent an hour with you, like they would look nowhere else. At least that would be the case for me. So.
Oh, you're sweet. Thank you.
So this has been amazing. I could just talk to you for hours and ask a zillion questions, but I just feel like this has been, well, I love your personal sharing, your personal storytelling, just really helping us understand this and just really create an openness to it, an openness to, for somebody who may not have thought of their physical body or their surroundings as energy, maybe they start to look at things a little bit differently and just open up to, the signs that are around them all the time. And if they're interested, join one of your courses so that they can cultivate these skills that they already have.
And discover for themselves, using their own book of evidence to see how it works in their life and learning to trust it by trying it. I always say to my participants and students is that try it. And if you don't like it, don't use it anymore. What works for you might not work for the next person, but I give you a number of ways to try things out and see what you notice. Like a really beautiful practice that I can share with all of your love. I just got the nudge from Spirit. I got to share this.
Go for it.
Is intention setting. And I know we didn't even talk about how we met.
I know.
There's so much to talk about. But
I know.
I'll say,
we'll have to have you on again.
Intention setting, first thing in the morning, so important to set your day up for success. So as soon as you're aware of that you are awake, setting your intention for the day and seeing how now your life kind of flows with that. I know you have an intention setting deck, Seeds of Intention, I believe.
Yeah. Yes.
Great deck. Have that on your nightstand and then pull a card in the morning and have that be your intention for the day and see what happens. Because where your intention goes, your attention and energy flows. And so that is a wonderful energetic practice in the morning to just set an intention and just see what happens with your day. And be careful with your intention, because if you intention to be of service for that day, you'll have a lot of crisis moments that people will be asking you for service. So, be intentional. Maybe it's with joy or ease and grace and flow, but setting that intention is going to be so important.
I love that Spirit's doing some PR for me.
It just
I love Spirit. They know that. So I appreciate the, you know what? You're right. As you've been talking, I just think of a time when I was really struggling, when I was in the depths of my struggle with addiction. And there was this small voice that just said to me, was like, you need to get home, not to my physical home, but just like, you need to get home and you need to do this by yourself, for yourself. And that is like the strongest voice I've ever heard, but it was quiet. Like, I really had to listen.
So beautiful.
But yeah, like they come to us all the time, but also in these times of crisis. And to that about intention, to me, that was then like, how am I going to use my energy? You know, I've put so much energy into my own self-destruction and numbing out anxiety and all of this, you know? And so the intention is also to align it with what you've been talking about, is choosing where you're going to put your energy. And to your point, when we set an intention, you know, our knowing comes from experience, right? So yeah, like if you want to know kindness, you're going to know kindness. You're going to know what's not kind. Like, it really is this active showing up in the world and learning. So yes, the universe, spirit, however we want to refer to it, is going to give you lots of opportunities to practice.
So be careful what you intention.
You might want to just hide under your bed some days.
Or just ease, grace, and flow. Those are really lovely intention words to use.
Oh my goodness.
So, thank you so much for this. It's just been absolutely lovely. I hope one day I get to actually meet you in person and give you a hug.
I'm sure it will happen. And we've covered so much, but, you know, I'm just curious if there is, you know, any final, like if there was anything else that you wanted to say, or any final inspiration or encouragement you want to give to listeners, I'd love for you to share that.
Well, I'd say my most important message and mission in this life is to just help everyone trust themselves again and trust their intuition and hear that voice of their soul so clearly that you can't not listen to it anymore. You know, once you know what you know, you can't unknow it. You know, I know it sounds cheesy, but so I think that's the last thing I'd just like to leave your listeners with, is maybe starting with the meditation, or, you know, looking into intuition development practices for yourself. And your life really shifts when you start to really listen to that inner compass, because it will change your life in miraculous ways. It really will.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here, and I would love to do this again.
We will. So it was just too much fun. Thank you. Thank you for listening. May some of the wisdom shared here inspire your most intentional living. For more information about this episode, this podcast, intentional living, and my work in the world, please visit mayyouknowjoy.com. You can also find my May You Know Joy and Seeds of Intention cards there, and my book, Intentional Days. You'll also find details for the Intentional Days membership, where you can gain access to a thriving community of intentional souls and lots of regular inspiration. I've got you covered. Until next time, I wish you great joy and many intentional days.